If you have found relationships to be really difficult, challenging, a lot of things coming up for you, and you want to learn how to use somatics to navigate that, Sarah Baldwin is an incredible somatic experiencing practitioner, coach, very well renowned. And I have to tell you, I was so nervous to ask her for an interview because I have been fangirling her for quite a while. And we had such a beautiful conversation and so healing. And she's just so raw and real. And it felt like reading a poem. I think you're going to love this one very much. I'm going to ask you, because this is me, I'm just going to go right in there.
Let's do it.
How was your childhood home?
Oh, every great religion, I've studied most of them, talk about these two concepts, the idea of heaven or nirvana, this place that we all want to arrive at, of interconnectedness, I am everything and everything is me. And then they all describe this some kind of version of suffering or what many call hell. And I don't think either of those places are way off in some galaxy or way deep in the depths of the earth. I think that they're here on this planet in the lived human experience. And my childhood home was hell, was as much of the description of hell as you can probably imagine. I was born from an affair. So both my parents were married and had me. And my mother had 8 children. She is a very dangerous narcissist. And that word, unfortunately, has gotten thrown around a lot, but in a very literal sense. And my first memory was being in a courtroom at 3 years old. My birth father had joint custody for the first 2 years and then decided, like, she's now mine. And was him saying, that's not my child. And that sort of just like began my journey. My mother married a very dangerous man who violently sexually abused me for a decade. No protection, poverty, extreme poverty. My mother didn't protect me. I was abused by brothers, babysitters, just a lot. So, the level of suffering that no human should ever have to encounter. No protection. My only friend was God and nature. And I grew up in this very rural place where I found a home in the woods. And that became my refuge. And not only did that become my refuge, I developed these brilliant, I'm sure we'll talk about here today, but protective parts that ensured I found a way to make it through unspeakable things. And the whole reason that we're here, well, it's not the reason we're here. The reason I'm here, you might be here with someone else today. The reason I'm here with you is because I was able to find a way out of that hell into what I think truly is heaven, that interconnectedness. And I'm just a real ordinary human, just like everybody else. And so if it's possible for me to do that, it's possible for all of us. We just haven't received things we need to make that happen. And the thing I'll say is I don't wish what I experienced on anybody. And even in fact, sometimes when the deeper level of something arises, I'll say, like, actually not so recently, quite recently, my dog is dying. We've had for 15 years. So I was 25. And I said to my partner, because a part came up, a deep level of stuff that I have I resolved a lot of, but not the last bits. And I said to him, in tears, I said, sometimes I just want to be able to grieve my dying dog. And so it's so different now in this journey. Like, oh my gosh, I have such aliveness, but not to undermine the degree of what I have had to overcome. And at the same time, when most people will never know how exquisite it is to just be. But after 25 years of not knowing what it is like to just be, I will never not know how exquisite that gift is. So and I don't want anybody to ever have to know how exquisite it is. I don't think we're too attached to someone, because I, even as an embryo, didn't have someone to attach to. So anyway, that's a long answer. There's a lot to it, but that's why I do this work. That's why I'm here. And I care so much about every person getting free from whatever kind of suffering they're trapped inside of. Doesn't have to be like mine. We all, as Peter Levine says, none of us go through life unscathed by trauma. So we've all got something. I just happen to get my soul. I don't know. We're going to have a chat when I leave this body. Decided to do a lot in this particular moment in time.
Wow, thank you for sharing that, Sarah. I don't think I've ever heard you share that.
Hmm.
Yeah. And it's so interesting when you were speaking, like what came to me is like what you said, like everybody goes through something, but like in our suffering moments, like when we're in our suffering, we're all like the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I will say this though. What I don't love is the concept that all suffering is the same. It isn't. You know, like somebody who's being tortured, sadistic torture, what I experience. That's very different than the suffering of, I had a very anxious mom who had a lot of trauma who couldn't attune to me. That is suffering. Oh, it's immensely painful. But I think, unfortunately, what's happened with social media is it's really taken away the important nuance of trauma therapy. And and so yes, we all know suffering. And we all know what is a 10 suffering for us. But that 10 suffering is not the same for everybody, I guess is the point that I think is really important to validate for everybody. And to also not to validate for people who have more extreme trauma and to not invalidate, though, people who don't. Thank goodness they don't. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you don't. And that 10 is pretty big deal, meaning there's people listening who it's very, in fact, quite confusing when, let's say, you had loving parents and you're like, why the heck do I have panic attacks all the time? I had loving parents. Why do I keep ending up in these relationships that are so tumultuous and hard and awful? What the heck is going on? Well, because no one taught your parents how to do it. And so they left you with a lot of wounds that are very painful and then cause us a lot of pain in our lives. So sorry to interject that, but I just think that that piece is so important too.
Yeah, I guess it's like, I don't know, either probably true, I'm an extreme empath. Um, but also just thinking about the moments that I suffer,
Oh, yeah.
and it's like in those moments, we just feel such like deep helplessness, right? And we can't even say like why or oh, it's because my mom did this or but it's just in that moment is like, oh, get me out of this hell, like you said.
Yeah, exactly. And those are usually for everyone listening when you have those moments of this is so much. I can't do this, or I feel like I'm drowning. You know, it literally feels like that. It can be confusing. You're like, I'm this successful or capable woman, man, person. Why do I feel like I got in a fight with my partner? Why do I literally feel like I'm going to die? I literally feel like I'm going to die. And I can't eat. I can't think about anything. I can't sleep. Well, because in those moments, we're not adult us anymore. We've literally, I think this is talked about enough, but we're time traveling all the time. Time is not linear. Einstein helped us with that, but certainly neuroscience and trauma confirms that we travel time anytime we're triggered. And so in those moments that we all have, adult us flies out the window and I'm, for all intents and purposes, a newborn baby, or I'm 5. And it would be life or death for a 5-year-old to be all alone in the middle of the city. You know, that would be life or death, or a newborn baby. And so, but none of us were taught any of this. So we find ways to make it through in those moments, to numb, to make it stop, I'll just people please so they come back so I don't have to be in this because it's too intolerable. And the beautiful thing about the work you and I do is that there's actually a way to make it so much better and to make those things stop happening.
Yeah. And I love that you interjected because for people pleasers, it's very hard to say, like, actually, I don't fully agree with you. Can you tell us about that? I wonder if you would have done that years ago, even.
Oh, yeah. In my, like, I mean, the way that I present today with them was not the way that I spend the majority of my life. Totally non-functional, mostly dissociated for a very long time. But I had brilliant protective parts. that helped me to survive my childhood. And for most people listening, and working with, I don't know, 40,000, 50,000 people in my career, we have different backgrounds, but we're all so much more similar than we are different. So for example, I had a people pleaser, a lot of people listening might have a people pleaser part that had to show up to different degrees. And so, if in our childhood, or actually, let me say this, let me just explain for anyone who's like, what the heck are you talking about with parts? I like to describe parts in the most simplistic way I can, in that when we come into the world, the goal is that we come in as one whole being. Now, for me, if you've had development, or if you had a pre or perinatal trauma like I did, then we're already fragmented. But let's say you were born and you come in as one whole being. Okay. Now, through life, we experience overwhelming things in the face of helplessness. That's what trauma is. And if we don't have the things necessary to resolve that trauma right after it ends, it becomes stored. So what do we need? We need safety and a mutually empathic witness. That's somebody who is safe, who can hold the experience with us so it can move through our body. So most of us didn't have those things. So what happens is you experience something overwhelming, like, let's say you had, your parents got divorced when you were 3, and they didn't know how to navigate that. So they were fighting all the time and angry at each other and pitting you against them. And it was just very tumultuous. So I have a 3-year-old part that fragments off of the whole me. This part that feels like, oh no, my family's going away. And your caregivers didn't know how, even if they were loving, to help you process that. That part gets stuck in that moment in time. Now they are so smart. They develop, or your psyche develops, an internal protector of that part. Parts travel in pairs. So we have this vulnerable part that was made to feel like, let's just say, as they were, made their family separate, like they take responsibility. So we develop this internal protector who says, I'm going to make sure that you never have to feel the pain of something like that again. And maybe this part becomes a people pleaser. If I just take care of everybody around me and I make them really, really happy, maybe no one will leave. And so these parts travel through your life. And they continue to work in this way. The protective part says, I'll just people please, so the vulnerable part doesn't have to feel this again. I'll just name a couple other parts. Maybe in middle school, you were bullied. That's a vulnerable part. And so a protective part comes in and says, I am going to try to be perfect, be a perfectionist. Because if I'm perfect in the way that I look and achieve, then I won't be bullied anymore. And then that pair travels through your life. So why do we show up in people pleasing? Because our nervous system, and why does this show up, by the way, the most in romantic relationships? All of your parts show up the most there. Here's why. Because you have a threat detector, we all do, called neuroception in our brainstem, and it's looking out all the time to see if we're safe or not. And so it looks to this internal database. Think of it like a computer system with every lived experience we've ever had. So when it looks for a romantic relationship, it says, what does this remind me of? Well, this is the most important person, my home, my place of vulnerability, connection, attachment. What intel do we have on that? Looks to the database, and what it's going to be reminded of most is your earliest childhood experiences. So then it says, how did we need to relate to other people to be safe back then? And it looks in there and says, oh, if I was ever disappointed, like you didn't show up to my recital, my game, I was shamed. Do you know how lucky you are? There's kids on the planet who don't even have parents. I'm working so hard for you. And I can't believe, you know what? And then they sulk. Oh, wow, I hurt my parent. I am so selfish. I am so bad. So what do we learn? People please. And everything will just be fine. And if it's fine, then my parents are nice to me all the time. And if I'm fine and I have no needs and I take care of them, I'm seen as so sweet. Oh, Sarah's so nice and she takes care of everybody. This is what I did with my extended family. Because I learned if I am sweet all the time, they'll take me in the summers. But I can't be disappointed. I can't have a tantrum. I just have to be really sweet. And so that people pleaser followed me everywhere. And that's what I became. Oh, everyone just wants to be around. She's so sweet. What a nice kid. Oh my gosh, she's so lovely. And so emotions like disappointment, anger, frustration were off limits. And then what happened in romantic relationship? Of course, my system says it's not safe to do that here. So what do we do as a people pleaser? We take care of, we take care of, we take care of. And then what occurs? You still have these underlying needs. So then resentment is planted because I'm not getting those needs met because I'm terrified to ask for them. If I say, hey, this didn't work for me, my nervous system and my parts say the same thing that happened in the past is going to occur. You're going to get shamed. You're going to get harmed, hurt. You're going to get abandoned. And this is why, everybody, you might notice that with friends or in your work, you feel like you. And then all of a sudden you get into other dynamics and you're like, I don't feel like me at all. I feel out of control, scared, small. Why am I doing this thing? Why am I saying this thing? What is my truth? I don't even know what my truth is. All indicators of parts showing up. And a lot of us have strong people-pleasing parts that are adaptations that we learned usually in childhood.
I love that explanation. It's so clear. And I really like PM melodies. Just simple. Yeah, like the adaptive child, the wounded child, and the wise adult. It's simple. Well, yeah, just explain. It's so powerful. So let's just say somebody's listening to this and they're like, oh my gosh, I've been stuck in the same cycles like you and I talked about before, picking the same kind of people, even when I think I don't. What's going on there? How can they kind of unravel that?
Yeah, well, we are incredibly and perfectly orchestrated mechanisms and organisms, beings. We are exquisitely well working. This is how well working we are. So I just talked about how we all have this database of past experience. Every lived experience is in there. And we have this threat detector that's subconscious. Neuroception picks up on the most subtle cues, picks up on everything. It knows things before you know it. And so when it comes to romantic relationship and what it means to be in partnership, the blueprint is in your database. It's whatever you experienced in childhood. And I think of family systems like this, like a theatrical play. So think of like, I don't know, Midsummer Night's Dream, Othello, whatever. I don't know why Shakespeare's coming to me, but think of a Shakespearean play. And when you're born into the world, you are born into Midsummer Night's Dream, the play. And you didn't get a choice. That's the play that you were born into. That's your family system. And here's the other thing you don't get a choice: in what role you play, or roles, plural. And so roles are doled out in the family system. Your mother's role, to suppress and placate your father. So her job is to just walk on eggshells and be small and have no needs and make sure he doesn't get too angry and not call it out. What is your father's role? His role is, when he feels out of control, to use anger as a way to manage that lack of feeling in control, to control everybody else. And then what other roles you get?
I love that you just literally described my childhood to a T.
Well, right? So many. Yeah. And then we have babies come into the world, into this play, and then a baby, your role, oh my dear, your role is to be your mother's emotional caretaker, because she has no intimacy with her father, your father, my father. And therefore, if I can be that for her, she'll be happier. And if she's happier, then I'm safer and I get my needs met. So guess what, newborn baby? You're going to be the emotional partner of your mother. Oh, you're going to be the striving part of the family. So you have to be the golden child. And if you are good at everything, you will be a reflection of your father's unfulfilled self-love for himself. And so when you're the golden child, it makes him feel good about himself. So you have to be the golden child. We need a scapegoat. It's all your fault. And so on and so forth. We're given all these roles, okay? So let's say, like in my play, I was born with a lot of roles, but overarchingly, it was I wasn't able to have needs. So my role was be needless, people please, take care of everyone else, and be in dynamics with others who take away your truth and reality, and placate them and walk on eggshells with them and make sure they're all right all the time. Okay, great. So that is what love was to me. That is all my system knew. I didn't like that, but that's all I knew. So guess what, everybody listening? Until you do this work, you are all experiencing arranged relationships, arranged marriages. You know who's doing the arranging? Your nervous system. It is picking for you. You think you're picking, you're not. So what would happen? I would go out and decide I'm going to go date. But guess what I'm holding? This play. Here's my play. Here's the role that I play. I have no needs. I'm invisible. I caretake. Codependency is my name of the game. And so I need, what's the role that I'm looking for someone to fill? So we can have this play that functions. I need somebody who is centered, who has all the needs, who is put on a pedestal, who takes away my truth, who gives me breadcrumbs, but never everything I need. Oh, doesn't see me, definitely doesn't see me, and isn't interested in me. So I go on a date. I'm sitting across from someone. They're being nice and sweet. But they tend to, every time I talk, they kind of look away. Like, oh, they look at the menu. What do you want? Oh, sorry, what were you just saying? Whatever. And my thread detector looks to that and says, oh, that disinterest, that kind of reminds me of your mom. That's great. That's love. And all of a sudden, I feel something in my body that I think is love. But what is actually occurring is my system is saying, this reminds me of that childhood experience, the only experience of love I had. And so all of a sudden, this person spends the whole time taking up all the space. They don't text me back right away. I have to earn the love. And all of a sudden, I feel like, wow, they feel like home. And guess what? I feel like home for them because they're looking for someone to fill the role in their play of being the codependent caretaker. And there we go. We come together. We don't even realize it, but we've meshed our plays. And now we have a new play. It's Othello. And now we have babies. And they do the same thing. It replicates over and over and over. And so you go around in the world, everyone listening, and you think, please do not think, there's no way to bypass this work. There's no shortcut. We're in a world right now where it's like, take this, take this thing, shortcut this thing. You can't shortcut this. And I've seen people say that I'm just going to pick different. So someone like me might say, okay, I'm used to picking people who are neglectful and misattuning, not curious. I'll pick someone who's so curious. Then you pick somebody who seems like they're asking you all the questions and they come to me and say, yeah, like they had all the right vernacular to ask the questions, but they weren't emotionally connected to it. Like they're not there with me. So it felt misattuned as well. And I'll say, yeah, because you picked, it's the same thing with a different frosting on it. And so what is the work? And by the way, I did this every relationship from middle school until I was, into my mid-30s was all the same pattern. It was someone who, it could have been, their skin looked different. They were from different places in the world. They had different first languages. They had different careers. And yet they all were the same, which was shiny penny. So sweet. Everybody liked them. Special in some way. I had to earn their love. They never fully chose me. Sometimes had other people or partners I didn't know about. Never met needs of mine. Made me feel bad for having needs and never chose me. So that was the pattern everywhere I went.
It's like dysfunctional functioning.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. And we're all doing this to some degree. If you everyone listening, think about it. By the way, it goes beyond romantic relationship. Look at friendships. What do those look like? Look at where you work. Can't tell you how many people I've worked with that they're like, every working environment I go into is chaotic, or people are pushing my boundaries. And I'll say, let's talk about your childhood. Chaotic childhood creates chaotic work environment. Childhood where there were no boundaries creates a work environment where whoever you work with pushes your boundaries. It just is replicated till we change it. So the beautiful thing is that database, you can change what's in it. Requires somatic parts work, reparenting. It's not just reparenting our parts. It's falling in love with the parts of us that no one fully saw and loved in the way they were supposed to be loved. And when we actually do that, it gets imprinted as real. Meaning your psyche says, this is what's true. And then all of the sudden, your picker literally changes. You are no longer attracted to that same type of person. I was no longer attracted to the unsafe narcissist. I was no longer attracted to a dynamic that was going to leave me feeling invisible and all the other things that I experienced. But it does mean that I still, even in doing all of the work, there are components of this work that cannot be done outside of a romantic relationship. Now, nobody has to get into a romantic relationship. It's not a prerequisite. And in fact, I think if we think of our wounding as a literal wound, like on our skin, a cut, you can heal up 90% outside of a romantic relationship with the clinicians, practitioners you work with in community, with other people and friends. You can heal up 90%. But there's a 10% of that that cannot be healed anywhere but a romantic relationship. And the reason is because trauma healing is state dependent. That simply means you need the same flavoring of a dynamic that is the flavoring of that you were wounded in. And nothing replicates it like a romantic relationship. So every person is going to pick somebody who pokes at the last 10%. That is the gift. Holy shit, it doesn't feel like a gift when you're in it. But no, it's like the opposite of a gift. But it is the gift of the universe that's saying, I need somebody who replicates just enough of that, or a flavoring of it that's different, but it just has a touch of it that will allow you to do this last bit of work that you need to do. Now, it's not that the other person rescues us, but what they're doing is they're poking at the thing that we need to look at, and it wouldn't get poked at in the same way if we weren't with them. And we're poking at the same thing for them. And all you need is two people who are safe and willing. That's it. Two safe and willing people. We can go in and do this work. And it's not, I'm so tired of people talking about, like, once you do the healing work and you get into a romantic relationship, it just should feel like safe and good. That is unequivocally untrue, dependent on what your trauma history was like. In fact, the more safe somebody is, for a lot of people, that can mimic grooming, or that can mimic the shoe's going to drop. And so our nervous system says, this is so dangerous. And at first can feel counterintuitive. So they are if you want to go do the ultra marathon, it's getting into a healthy relational dynamic. Healthy does not mean easy.
Yeah, I keep telling my friends, like, I feel like such a good person when I'm single. I'm like, I'm so nice. Like, I'm so kind and nice, you know?
Oh yeah. I feel like myself on my work. I'm like, I feel great. I'm like my highest version of me. And then I don't feel those like depths of like heavy loneliness or sadness. It doesn't really show up. Or I don't feel like the ice queen. Once I asked my partner, sometimes people say, Sarah, you're a lot like how Mr. Rogers was for me as a kid, which is what Mr. Rogers was for me. Saved my life, truly, literally saved my life as a kid. And I asked my partner once, I was like, do you think I'm like Mrs. Rogers? Because people say that about me. I started to laugh and he goes, parts of you. And he said, well, I get to see the parts that nobody loved and that were not safe. And those parts are tough, and the work is that we can see who our parts are. We can acknowledge what's actually happening and we work with them. We reparent them. We love them again and again and again. But it's not for the faint of heart, coming into a healthy relationship.
How can people tell and discern if they are just scared because they feel too safe?
Yeah.
Versus get away from this person.
Yeah. Oh, that's so, so, so important. A lot of people ask me this too. How do I know what my truth is? So that only way to know is through embodiment, meaning somatics is the name of the game. So what I do with folks is I never look at with healing work. I know before we started recording, I was talking about there's an order to healing. When you do it out of order, it doesn't work, and in fact, could be very dangerous. And one of the things about this healing work is that what I really believe is, the more I've embodied it myself and worked with people, thousands of people, but truly this came from my own embodiment, is, this is a love story. This is the greatest love story ever written, is healing. And what we have to do first is to become the warrior. We're like in the movie Gladiator. So when people come to people like you and me, I really think of it like we're in this ring and we're saying, are you ready? We have to train now. We have to become strong. And people might be saying, I'm tired. I don't think I need to train today. No, we have to train today. Become strong. This is reshaping your nervous system. This is getting adult you online. We have to do all this training. We don't go into the fight. We train first. Otherwise, you're going to not win the fight. And that's re-traumatization. So we train. And part of training is we come into, who am I in 2026? Who am I? And we know that us mammals have mirror neurons, so nervous systems read each other, but also everything in nature. I use nature as one of my biggest teachers, obviously, because I spent all of my childhood in the woods. So, so the thing about nature is everything's living and it's all energy, and energy responds to energy. So our nervous system responds to it. So in my work, I use examples in nature a lot for people to feel into who they are. So I use things like a mountain, a great mountain. A great mountain isn't afraid to be seen, to take up space. The great mountain isn't afraid of what is happening in the world. A great mountain isn't afraid of what's in your bank account or if a business fails. The great mountain knows like it knows, like it knows everything will be okay. And it knows like it knows, like it knows. It has such a purpose to house everything that lives inside of it. Just as the great sequoia tree knows the same. And the prosody of my voice right now is what I think and matches the prosody of the energetic tone of all of these beautiful examples in nature. And so a sequoia tree, is just in the sequoia tree forest. If you come to it and say, I'm so afraid, it won't say, don't be afraid. It's all come lay at my feet, I know. But I'm not afraid. I was around before the crusade. And it's all okay. And this is what's true. And truth can be painful and truth can be hard. The truth is never trauma, like trauma. And so we have to energetically feel in a sensory way, what is it like to be my own sequoia tree? What is truth? And so, from my own sequoia tree, and I can feel this when people are not in their sequoia tree. Anyone talks about a romantic relationship they're into and they say like, oh my gosh, and they're so great. And this is what's great about them. And this is what's great about them. And this is what's great about them. And it's infatuation. Everything's just so great about them. This is like the best relationship ever. That's not a sequoia tree. That is a little child that is in a fairy tale that thinks it's going to rescue them from their childhood. You know what a sequoia tree says? If I was just again at them and I was putting my hand on this one, and I know this might sound weird if anyone listening, like she's very science focused and now she's not. Science and spirituality are best buddies, I think, that the world doesn't want to acknowledge. And I put my hand on her, and she was saying very clearly, you're so tired. That's not like a nice compliment to be like, you look tired. You look really tired. And she was saying, you have all these spiritual gifts that you don't use enough. Why haven't you been writing your poetry? Why haven't you been talking to us? Why haven't you been placing your hands on our earth? Because when you do, everything is okay. And that thing that you've been meaning to birth, that's supposed to be birthed through you, you know why it hasn't? Because you haven't been doing that. Come, lay your hands on that. That is what she was saying to me, which means, that's not just like, you're so great, when we're in our adult self. The point of what I'm trying to say is when I'm in me, it isn't just everything is good. In fact, when I'm in me and I think about, for example, my own partnership, I can see the amazing things about him. Wow, I do have somebody who is the opposite of the neglect I experienced. If I complain that my camera on my computer isn't working, there's 4 cameras there 3 days later that I get to pick from. Wow. Planning trips for me. I never got anyone to do those things, just tending to me all the time. And not sometimes, he is still working on regulating frustration. And that is hard for me. I don't love that. And that is a working edge for us. And there's plenty of other working edges too that are hard for us. So this is what it's like to be in our truest self. That can be okay. That makes sense. So I just want to first name, like when you're anchored in you, we have to practice this. That is the only time you actually know what is occurring in the relationship. And then what we have to do is feel in a somatic way, what is it like for me to be here? And I have done this thousands of times, so I know, what does a sequoia tree feel like? So that when I sit down at dinner, my partner is so good because of his childhood at sharing. Like, because when he came home with the school project and somebody said, how'd that go? He was able to share about it. Well, and another thing happened and another thing. And here's the diorama that I made. And that's really great. And it has this like, cheetah in there. And so I have had gotten much better, but a protective part that's a tester. So let's say I had a big day. That protective part would purposely at dinner say, how was your day? That's a test, everybody. That is not a question. The test is, I was neglected. And so you better read my mind, and not just read my mind, everyone listening. My parts were expecting him to be a perfect parent that he can't be. So I would ask a question and he would think he's very literal, neurodivergent, so literal. So if I ask a question, he's going to answer that question. And then you know what the protector would do? I'll ask a follow-up question. It's been 3 minutes. I'm tracking 3 minutes now. Oh, tell me more about that. How'd that meeting go? Oh, now he's talked for 6 minutes. And by then she is shut off and she's like, I don't even know why I'm in this. You're just like my mother. You're just like everybody else. But not even saying that, projecting my mother onto him or my ex-husband onto him. You're selfish. You don't care about anybody but you. I'm not important to you, blah, 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 blah. I have this beautiful, loving partner who is wonderful. And I just did something, my protective parts just did something extremely unfair to him. And so what I'm trying to get at, everybody, is what you feel in any given moment may not be the truth of that moment. It may be the truth of something that happened a long time ago, or even in a past relationship. And so I have to be very clear on, Sarah, do you feel like the sequoia tree right now? If you don't, this is not adult you. This is a part. So let's get adult you back. And from adult me, which, might take going for a walk, might take taking a break, might take just, the faster more we do this, the faster we can come back into adult us. And then my adult self can say, what is actually true about this person in my life? Oh my gosh. And the truth with my partner is the last few years have been stitching up the last 10% of what my wound is like a open ocean tsunami storm. Sacrificed his whole life for me, literally. And truly. So when I can show my parts, this is the man that's actually in front of you. Not like your childhood. I know it feels like that because we set him up in a booby trap, but it's not. Or because he's imperfect or whatever. Gets annoyed at the TV remote. But it's different. And I need to show you that. And so the whole point of that story, everybody, is anything that you are feeling is the truth to a part of you. It just might not be truth to adult you, including, here's another really important revelation I want to share that I had at one point. I have one of my closest friends. She's an amazing woman, does incredible psychologist, does incredible work in the world. And she left me a voice memo at one point. She's in LA traffic. We were just talking. She's talking about some processing she was doing, like some beautiful thing. And then she was like, what the fuck, are you kidding me? Someone cut her off in traffic. She said it more angry than I just said it. When I listened to that voice memo, I didn't get bothered at all. I was like, yeah, it probably did cut you off. What you're saying, it's a beautiful thing you're doing with your parts, blah, blah, blah. If my partner was to say that, I would not feel calm. Wow, you are so whatever, like on this high horse, self-protection. And I had to look at like, wow, with my friend, nothing gets triggered. With my partner, something gets triggered. That means what I'm experiencing with him is not about him. That's about my past. And so everybody, the name of the game is like, we have to get really clear on whose truth am I feeling right now. And if it's not adult mind, I got to get adult me present. What is adult me's truth about this? And then who is this part that I need to go tend to? And what is this reminding them of? And what do they need from me? Relationships. If anyone says they're bored in a relationship, I don't know what you're doing, because this is like you're time traveling all the time. You're like going back to this part. Oh, there you are. Oh my gosh. And like, oh my gosh. Intimacy, vulnerability, like, everything. It's a wild ride. It's like, free Disney World ticket. So you have to be able to delineate. And if you don't, it's a shame. I see too many people leave things that are really right for them and stay in things that are really wrong for them because they're not in their adult self. And a really good relationship should be like, like a hike through the Andes. Beautiful and prolific, but hard. And then beautiful and amazing. And then really hard. Like, are we going to be able to do this? Are we going to be able to make this? Oh, we got to this next beautiful part. That's what it's supposed to be. And I wish that there were more love stories that were actually accurate.
Me too. That was beautiful. Thank you. And I laughed so much with you. I do these tests too.
Yeah, all the testing.
All right, I'm gonna ask this question. Let's see. Let's see. Is this person even interested in me? Narcissistic father. So
yeah.
do they care about my needs? Do they care about me? Let's test. Let's find out.
Yeah. And it's just all a lot of testing, just to instead of vulnerability. They're very different things.
Yes. Instead of saying, I need you to ask about me right now, I'm actually really needing you to ask about me.
Yeah.
That was beautiful, Sarah. Thank you. And I think that part about which part of you is speaking, which part of you is being activated is so huge. Yeah. So I am guessing that between your mid-30s until now, or until you met your current partner, you did a lot of work to strengthen your connection to your wise adult self.
Yeah.
Share about that with us, or just that journey, and all those steps that you teach people.
Yeah. So I did. I spent, a good, before I met my partner, I didn't date for 5 years. And that time, if anyone's listening, do you have to wait that long after? No, you don't. After I got divorced. A part of that, by the way, were parts that were work is so cozy and comfy. There are people, they have little parts like us. We can just be an adult us. This is really great. And I remember a mentor of mine at one point said, therapist, I know there might be someone who says, therapist shouldn't say this to you. He's my mentor. Said at some point, Sarah, I think it's time to get into a relationship. And I was like, why? I'm doing great. They're because we've done a lot of what can be done. It's time. And so before that, what I did do was I actually fell in love with my parts without an agenda. Meaning I didn't, most of us approach parts work with an agenda. I've rarely met somebody who comes to parts, never. I've never met somebody actually who's I want to do parts work because I'm just so excited to fall in love with the sabotaging part of me. I can't wait. So excited. I just want to fall in love with them. No, because they wanted them to stop. That's the agenda. So what happened for me was I came to my parts with agendas. They taught me so much, more than any person has ever taught me, my parts have. And I really fell in love with every single one of them. The parts that dissociate. I was so angry that I was so dissociated, but fell in love with that part that saved my life. All the vulnerable parts, the parts that were neglected, everything. And then I met my partner. And then all the parts were why are we doing this? What? We were in this prison that was awful. Then we renovated it and it became this beautiful palace. And we should just stay in the palace. You want dogs, donkeys, iguanas, friends. You can bring everybody into this palace, but we don't leave the palace. Let's definitely never leave the palace.
Like Noah's Ark.
Yeah, it's like Noah's Ark. So we built this beautiful prison, but it was a prison. And the most loving thing as the parent self that we can do is to say, I know it's so nice in here and there's so much more for you out there. Because what I wanted for my parts wanted for me wasn't just that I got to have a partner. I wanted my parts to have a family. And I can't be an entire family for my parts. We need others. And that's when they were but we have friends. Let's get 700 rescue animals. And I said, yes, and I want you to see what it's like to have a safe experience of a man. And so even though I did all this work, what it meant was I drew in somebody who is so protective and loving and safe and kind and just a beautiful soul. And willing. I remember actually my same therapist said this to me. He said, because I was very nervous about the healing journey. I was or the journey of getting into a relationship again. Because I knew I was going to have to go slow and all the things. And he was like, Sarah, you're a warrior. You are. And it means you're going to need a warrior to do this with. And you'll know early on if I'm not a warrior. And my partner is a warrior. Because it meant, and this is what I think the truest love story is us with our parts. What the work that we do with them, of loving them. And then I think the purpose of romantic relationship is you get into a relationship with someone else. And, and when I think of like, when people ask me, like, what is love? Well, I think about my parts when I got into a relationship that were like, this is a terrible idea. A man in the house, that was the worst thing in the entire world. So like, let's get the man out of the house. And I had some protective parts that did really not okay stuff with my partner. Like, how do we push him away? How do we drown him? Let's drown him. Let's all drown him. Every protective part's like, drown him. And it was hard enough for me to do the work of falling in love with him. But this man, it's like an expedition you have to go on, right? Like Everest. And at least my parts with me were like hugging me along the way. And they kept trying to push him off the trail. But he kept walking on the trail. And I think like, wow, that's what love is to me. And then it's showing our parts. Hey, look, this person is different than the past. And we're not, and if we think that we tell our parts one time or 5 times, like they're different, that the parts are going to be like, yeah, for sure, I bet. No, they're going to be like, no, they're not different. You have to show them again and again and again and again. And then you do it again and again, and you continue to do that. And then they say, oh, maybe. And so, oh my gosh, it wasn't easy. It was really hard. In fact, I would say, and I want to say this to any entrepreneurs listening, who are like, that sounds like a lot of time. Yeah, it is. It's a lot of time. In fact, in the last 2 years, I would say in my business, I took 50% of the energy that was going towards my company, and I put it towards, no, more. 2 years ago, I put about 70% of my energy towards this last 10% of the work. This last year, maybe 60%, 70. And I thought, there's no way my company is going to be okay. This is not going to work. And we served 40% more people every year. Grew 40%. How? Because when you embody this work, you become a bigger light in the world. And things, without you having to say anything, become magnetized to that, because we all want to come into fullness of expression. Everybody wants to be the fully blossomed sunflower, which means we have to blossom as a sunflower. And abundance just arrives when we do. So I just want to name that too. This is like not selfish work. And it also won't mean that the rest of your life is going to fall apart. In fact, the rest of your life will flourish for sure.
I feel like you're a little bit psychic. You're like saying the things that I'm needing to hear.
You know what one thing I want to say on that for everybody listening is when you come back into, I'm certainly in parts, I get triggered in parts, but when I'm in self, when we're all in self, I think we're all psychic. It's like, how did the birds know the rain was coming? And this beautiful thing that, how did the elephants know it's time to migrate? Because you're letting yourself be the vessel. That's something, whatever you call, we all call this thing we're doing here, gets to come through. And I've seen it when watching you and listening to you in your work. Certainly happens with me and my work, that for anybody listening, you're wanting to step further into your own calling in your life. When you embody this work, you get to get danced by life. That's the coolest thing. You just show up and life dances you. You've done all the stuff, and then I can let go of it and just allow. And that's when this magic stuff happens, like you just named.
I feel like I just listened to a poem for an hour. That's how I feel like. Yeah. So I didn't know you write poetry, but I hope you like share it. I hope you publish it.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, that's how it's felt on this end.
Thank you.
So first of all, is there anything that you want to say that I haven't asked? And how can people work with you?
I don't know. Just maybe just the last thing is, time is so precious. And so I just am grateful for you inviting me here and for your time, and for everyone listening, for your time, and that you are doing enough. So often we feel like, oh, I should be doing more. All the things you could be listening to now, look what you're doing. You're listening to, you're growing. Don't underestimate the moments of growth. You look at a tree and you look at it in the winter, there's so much happening inside of that tree you can't see. And all of a sudden you busy yourself and then you look up and then there's buds on the tree. growing, growing, growing. In one moment, the last thing I want to say is I was talking to the earth one time, and she showed me this image of a seed being planted, me, this next version of where I'm going in life. And she said, it's so curious what you humans do. The seed's planted, you're already the sequoia tree, it's planted. And then you dance around it worried. Oh no, was it going to become a sea lion? Is it going to become a walrus? And what if it does? And then it can't, it's not going to have water, it's going to die. It's going to be so bad. And she said, oh, it's so funny how you humans do this. Just go play. Get curious, play, hug each other, laugh, rest. It's going to grow. In fact, it'll grow faster if you do that. If you want, you can keep dancing around it like you're doing, but just know that it doesn't contribute to it growing. And I thought, oh, isn't that true that we're all doing that? And so for everyone listening, remembering who you are, those desires of your soul are inside of you because they already exist. It's what is real and true. And it's this work of becoming, healing, that allows that growth to happen. And don't underestimate and minimize the growth you're doing. Every step is what gets us there. So thank you for having me. Thank you everyone for being here.
Somatic work is so spiritual.
Oh, it's the most spiritual thing I've ever encountered in my life. For sure. Yeah.
And I'm guessing your website, your Instagram.
Oh, yeah.
So all the things.
My Instagram is Sarah B Coaching. You can find me there, or sarahbaldwincoaching.com. And I've got free offerings and programs and all kinds of stuff.
Have all.
Great. Thank you for having me. Thank you.